Hello. I've kind of I met David Blatner, who I'm going to interview this evening. Maybe I met him online. It must have been about 2 or 3 months ago now. And he opened my eyes to a whole other world separate from the illustration industry, which I've been part of for, if you know me, for maybe 20 or so years now. So, David, let me just check with him. David Blatner, is that how I say it?
Yes.
David Blatner.
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
David Blatner is a writer and speaker specializing in desktop publishing software, specifically Adobe InDesign, Photoshop, and also Quark Express. He's written 15 books about various subjects with over 500,000 still in print, including Spectrums, The Joy of Pi, The Flying Book, Judaism for Dummies, and 𝗩𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗏, The Art and Science of Virtual Reality. Did I get that all correct?
You
Everything
did.
that I've stolen off Wikipedia?
You went way back for the virtual reality book. That was a long
I
time
thought that was
ago.
probably the case. Yeah. So, what do you want to add to that? And do you want to, how did the thing that you do primarily, from what I can tell, CreativePro Week, sorry, how did that come about? And what else do we need to know about you at the moment?
So I started as a writer in the late 1980s. It's been quite a long time, early 90s, focusing on desktop publishing books. And then I started writing other kinds of books. Words are my thing. Where you are awash in illustration, for me, it's all about words and using words to communicate and train and inspire, or whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And I shifted over the years from writing to in-person training to working on events, and then in the about 15 years ago, I started started working on conferences, and in 2010, I think it was, we had our first conference called PepCon, the Print and E-Publishing Conference, and what we realized was that when we put people in the same room, when you get people together in real life where they can actually talk to each other and learn from people, from experts, and learn from each other, amazing things happen. And this was really wonderful for me. We had such a good time that we kept doing more events, and we ended up working on the InDesign conference for Adobe InDesign users, and the Photoshop and Illustrator conference for Photoshop and Illustrator users. And then in 2017, long story short, we decided to bring all of our events together into one show called CreativePro Week, where we would cover, InDesign, Photoshop, Illustrator, fonts, design, all that stuff in one place in 1 week, and
I
that
actually
would
thought you'd
move
been going longer than that.
Well, not Creative Pro Week specifically. Now, Creative Pro has a much longer history. Creative Pro goes all the way back to 1999, when it was before people just talked about websites. It was a web portal. Do you remember that phrase, web portal? We were we were a portal for graphic designers, art directors, and so Creative Pro Week came out of CreativePro.com, and so there's a lot of different stuff. We've been working on a lot of different stuff over the years, but again, it's all about designers, art directors, educators, marketing professionals, all the people who need illustration, because we can't draw. I actually got into this originally as a young man, because I couldn't draw. I cannot tell you how frustrating it was for me, even as a teen, having friends who could just do amazing artwork, and I could not draw a straight line. But a computer could do it. The computer could do it for me. And so I started using computer software in the 80s, and the rest was history. It's all about the fact that I can't draw. But we need illustrators, and that's why I was so excited to meet you and start learning about what you've been doing.
Yeah, well, I find a lot of illustrators they can't market themselves and they don't know how to
Mm,
work with design and type properly.
sure.
But they're brilliant at the visual aspect, the
Mm,
illustration side, and the color theory and stuff like that. But when it
yes.
comes to put it together in a commercial sense and having it on a final product,
Mm.
there's a slight disconnect there. That's why you need people from, well, best way to put it, the other side. It's
Well, I really believe that this is the key to almost everything that's going on in the industry right now. It used to be that we could do it all. Each one of us could have we could know it all. We could become our own companies doing everything almost entirely on our own. And that has drifted away. The farther we get into the 21st century, the more sure I am that the only good solution is the phrase "together we thrive."
Oh
It's
yeah,
all
definitely.
about how do we work together in community so that we can all thrive. That's we need to look for those win-wins.
I know it's kind of an issue in the design industry as well, but there's always has been within in the illustration side of it a lot of gatekeeping. So
Hmm.
to an extent, you'll see this um, when you're designing a product or an item. Um, when you need an illustration for it, the first gatekeeper you'll see will be the stock industry.
Ah.
You'll
Okay.
you'll have
Yes.
you'll have purposely stock companies trying to keep the creators away from their clients because they don't want them
Mm.
to connect. There
Of
there is a
course.
there
Of
is a reason
course.
for that. That's where they make their money, and it's a billion
Interesting.
dollar industry. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
there are purpose systems in place to keep these people
Mm.
separate. And when you realize that, it starts to break it down, and people can start working together. And the
Great.
best advertising agencies, they know exactly where to look for decent illustrators, or they can find agents that they have a trusted relationship with, and they can go straight to them, and they'll give them what they need, something unique for the job they're working on, which is what everyone wants in the end.
That's always been the case on the higher end design world, in that, like you said, higher end agencies and so on. What's interesting to me is that it's like that pyramid. There are so many more designers in the middle and lower areas who could still be working with illustrators, but they don't know where to go. They don't know how to have that conversation, and they don't know the law, the legal aspect of it, or the business aspect around it. So the designers hold themselves back and they say, "Oh, I'm nervous about this. I don't know what to do. I'll just go to stock." And it
Yeah, it's the
and
path of least
you know,
resistance. Yeah.
yeah, it is. It really is. Now it's intriguing that I just want to share. We have been doing InDesign magazine for 17 years now, which is a monthly PDF. It's a magazine that goes on about it's all about Adobe InDesign, and we publish it online. And we've been using stock images for covers for 17 years. I mean, for some of it has been custom, but mm, um, in general, it's been stock. So we have made this big decision this year that we are shifting InDesign magazine after 17 years. We're changing InDesign magazine to become CreativePro magazine. It's a this is the motion.
That's
And
a big change.
InDesign users, yeah, it is. It's a big change for us. It's an exciting opportunity because we can talk about things like illustration. We can talk about photo and all kinds of things and design in Creative Pro magazine that we weren't able to cover as much in InDesign magazine. But so we're making this change, and we've decided that for the very first issue of Creative Pro magazine, which is November, um, we are we are having we have a custom illustration for our cover, and it's so exciting. I can tell you, it's so exciting to work with an illustrator and say, here's our themes, here's what we're trying to get across, here's the feeling we're trying to create. And she went off and built it, and it's like, not only is it far better than any kind of stock image we could have gotten, but there's a sense of ownership for us. There's a sense of right? There's a real sense of inclusion that we've never been able to have. It's always been like, here's the image, great, it kind of works. Now it's like, oh, I'm so excited to share this. That change, I really want to see that change happen for more designers around the world. I think it's going to be very compelling. So the more we can get designers and illustrators together, the better.
Well, the thing is, it's yours, and it's something you can be proud of. And when you look at it,
Yes, yes,
you're
yes.
not reusing an image, and it's not an image you're going to see again later on something else. Really, yeah.
We had this recently. We had an image, a cover of InDesign magazine recently, where I don't know what happened, but for some reason it became the stock photo of the month or something, and it showed up on I saw it on 6 other magazines and ads, and oh, it was so embarrassing. I thought, wow, how why did we choose that one?
Well, with it being a PDF, was there a feeling you could pull it and replace it? Because
Not at that point. No, it was
no.
too late at that point. I mean, I suppose we could have. We could have, but
Have you ever done a printed?
we have done special editions that have been printed,
Oh, okay.
but not. One of the challenges for us is that we we have such a large percentage of our membership which is over outside the United States, and it becomes extremely expensive, of course, to ship to. And also it just takes so long. People would have to wait for a month to get their issue. So we decided from the very beginning it's more important to get it out into people's hands as quickly as possible. And of course, we're a small business, so financially it made a lot more sense.
Backtracking a little bit, I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
When I spoke to you, obviously off camera a little while ago, you mentioned about having a love for music. I just wanted to know where that comes from and what that involves.
I have been a not very good musician for most of my life, I suppose. My parents got me into piano lessons, like so many, and what I found though is uh, my love is of the ability to create sound. I think there's something about creating sound that is so fascinating, and I should point out, I love it. Let's see if I can bring this up quickly. There was this wonderful line. Dizzy Gillespie, the jazz musician Dizzy Gillespie, once said, "I don't care much about music. What I like is sounds." And that really resonates for me because the ability just to create any kind of sound and not get too caught up if on am I good at this, am I bad at this, but the ability to just create sound that could be music, I find very compelling. So I have lots of instruments, none of which I can play well. I don't play any of them well. I have a wonderful Australian didgeridoo that I just love making sound with. I've got tambourines, I've got piano, I've got lots of guitars and bass, and I think I always hoped that my kids would pick them up and become really great musicians, but that hasn't happened. My younger son actually does play the trumpet, and so he's quite good. The trumpet is we're really far afield here. This is not about design at all.
It's all right.
But the amazing thing about the trumpet is the more I learn about how one would play it, the less likely it is that anybody ever could. It's so hard. It's really the brass instruments are unbelievably difficult. Anyway, it's fascinating. I do love music, and I think one of the reasons I like music. Here's where I'm going to bring it full circle. One of the reasons I like music is that it's ultimately about there's something inside that needs to be expressed. There's a feeling, there's an idea, there's something that needs to be expressed. And how that expression happens depends on how we express it is going to depend on a lot of different things. And oftentimes it's much like language. You know how some languages seem to be better at expressing than others, like French, which I don't speak. But in theory, if I could speak French, I could be really more romantic, or Italian. If I could speak Japanese well, I could communicate in a different way really effectively. With instruments and with music, you can express in different ways, and I love that. And for me, that's where it gets back to design or illustration. There's something inside that needs to come out, and I've got these various tools I could use, whether it's print or online or watercolor or pencils or markers. There's all these things that I can use, all the different tools that we use as humans to get what's inside us out and to somebody else and into their brain, because that's the transaction that has to happen. I think of it as a packet. I have this stuff inside. I need to package it up, and I need to pass that package to you so that it, as effectively as possible, goes into your being. That's communication, ultimately. And we communicate through design, through typography, through color, as you were mentioning, through line. All of those things are ways uh, that we design or package what's inside of us that needs to be moved, that needs to be transmitted from one person to the other. I know this is kind of crazy, but I think it's really important. So music, color. I believe it was Kandinsky who talked about the underlying energy that is transmitted through color or form or music. And the idea that whether you're hearing the sound or seeing the color or seeing the form, the shape, you're experiencing the same kind of transmission of information. I love that.
That's all very cool. It's the invoking feelings, isn't it?
Feelings and information.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's definitely part of your being, isn't it? Yeah, it's the
I want to help people communicate better, and that's really core to everything we're doing at CreativePro. Ultimately, CreativePro is about helping people thrive, people and organizations thrive through design, by design, with design, all the aspects of design, which of course includes illustration and art.
so. On to a slightly more boring subject, because
Okay,
I love music. I love listening to music.
I'll
I love you talking
I'll
about
try and be
music.
boring.
But the boring bit. So,
Okay.
how has your life changed with all of the in-person events and everything you do, and the
Mm.
work you do primarily since the pandemic started and it kind of everything was shut down?
Well, there's the new normal, I suppose. Things will always be different, but of course they're different every year, no matter whether there's a pandemic or not. It's always changing. Um, what's funny is that for me personally, the pandemic didn't change too much. I work from home. I live in a relatively quiet area. It's stayed quiet, and so my actual work environment has been very similar. Like for so many people, so many of us who work from home. However, the work did change dramatically. We have been doing these live events for years, going back to 2010 or earlier, and that had to change. We had about 2 months to change Creative Pro Week from a live event that was going to be in Austin, Texas, to an online event, and it was among the most stressful things I've ever done in my entire life. The entire company, we had to basically bet the company that this would work, and it did. It turned out it worked great. There were a number of people who decided they didn't want to go. There were a lot of people who signed on for the first time. And what we learned was, in some ways, these online events can be not just as good, but even better than the live events. This was a big, really big eye-opening lesson for us. Clearly, for a lot of people, they've been wanting to go to a Creative Pro event for years, but simply couldn't because it's expensive. We get that. It's expensive to travel someplace and be there live. So they were able to experience it, which was great. Um, on the other hand, what I didn't expect, which was really amazing, was there were some people who had been going to our live events for years who came to the virtual event. And they said, David, I got to tell you, I kind of liked it better. I did not expect that. because I'm a big believer in live events. That's like I said earlier, there's magic that happens at live events. However, what we learned is that for some people going to a live event, they're sitting at the back of a 1,000-person room. They're seeing everything from a distance. They're not having so the virtual event ended up being more intimate. It was actually the word they used. They said this is more intimate than when we would go to the live event. So okay, so we know that the online event has some aspects that are better, and we know that that the live event has aspects that are better. So next year, May 2022, I don't know when people are going to be listening to this or watching this, but May of 2022, we're going to be doing both. We'll be in Washington, D.C. We will be live in Washington, D.C., and we will have that experience. And we will also be live streaming it and having special online events for the online part of the Creative Pro community as well. And so we know we can do both of those things now, and that's a huge change. I mean, we never knew that we could do online, and now we know we can do both.
Yes, you don't have to do one or the other at this point. It's definitely a
Yes,
hybrid sort of model that you can go with going forward.
we have to.
And
We have to.
yeah, and the thing is, in-person events, everyone's different. I don't know. I don't know whether you yourself, because you've probably always been so busy with your own events, whether you've gone to any other events, similar design
Oh yeah,
events. But
sure.
the
For
first
years.
time you go there, there's always the thing where the people that have been doing it for several years, they're all very clicky,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you kind of feel that you're on the fringe, and
Yes.
especially if it's an established event, there doesn't feel like there's any way in. But when things are suddenly
Mm.
online, you're right, you're there, you want to speak to someone, you can just send them a message, you can just talk to them directly.
Yeah.
It takes down that barrier to an extent to the new people coming in. But yeah.
That's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. We have always tried, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I've been going to events since the early '90s, I guess, uh, and I know what you mean. We have tried so hard with Creative Pro to make it feel like an open community, to make it feel welcoming, and so. But every event is different for sure.
Okay, so fun little question for you. Do you ever boot up software from the 90s to remind yourself how far we've come? Are you ever tempted?
I
Do
I
you use anything that's that old still?
I what's funny is um, the answer could have been no. I don't have any machines that could even run that anymore. But the truth of the matter is, I've kept virtually every computer I've ever owned, going all the way back to 1984, and so. But I don't usually boot them up. So I have them, but I don't actually boot them up. I did actually try and start up my old Mac 128K from 1984 recently, because I wanted to see Mac Paint and Mac Draw and the early bitmapped things, and I couldn't get the Mac to run. It was very sad. So I'm trying to figure out how to get it going again. Um, so I don't look too much at the old software. I'm so busy looking at the new and how do we continue looking forward. But I am keenly aware of how far we've come in with Photoshop and Illustrator. And it's fun looking back. Adobe Illustrator. I started with Adobe Illustrator in 1987 or so, and I started doing magazine mastheads and icons and all kinds of stuff. My very first magazine was the American Association for Artificial Intelligence magazine, AI magazine, and I drew the masthead and I drew the icons and I laid out the whole thing with an early version of Quark Express, and that was really what helped launch me into publishing back in the late '80s.
Did you used to be employed as a designer?
Always freelance, always
Always
freelance. I've always
freelance.
had my own
Okay.
company.
Okay.
Um, my mother to this day asks me to explain what I do for a living. She's like, I think she's still waiting for me to get a job after all these years. But no, it's been 30 plus years of it's always been my own business. And that little business, the little one person business, grew to the partnership with Anne Marie, which grew to Creative Pro, which is now a little medium-sized business.
I think we can say you're an author rather than an educator if you needed to have a job description.
I think, yes, I think if I were trying to explain again to my mother, it would be author is closer than educator, but it's a little bit like those when you go to the optometrist and they say educator, author, educator, author. Okay, author, a little bit better author.
Well, so
Yeah,
15 books. Is it 15 books?
something like that. Well, it always depends. I will share. It's a challenge, especially because I've written so many books in the computer book industry that um, I wrote real world Photoshop, for example, with Bruce Fraser and then later Conrad Chavez in the this was 20 years ago, but the that went through, I don't know, 7 different editions. Well, each edition, do we count each edition as a separate book? I mean, each one took a lot of work. So if you count each edition of every book that I've written, it's like 45 books. So it's a lot of books, a lot of editions, but 15 titles, I like to say.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. So for you've sold more than 500,000 books. Yeah.
A lot of books.
So
Honestly, I stopped counting at 500,000 because it sounded impressive.
oh, okay.
It may be more. I don't know.
Probably
It's a
in
bunch.
that case. So all for all the budding authors out there, easy question. What's your secret?
The secret, the first secret, it's there's never one. There's a series of secrets. The first secret is what my dad told me when I was about 10 or 11. And my father actually had written several books. And I told him as a child, I want to write a book. I'm going to write a book, Dad and Daddy. And he said, David, don't write a book until you have something to say. And that was actually surprisingly compelling. I think for many years I thought, well, do I have something to say yet? No. Do I have something to say yet? No. And actually did not enjoy writing through most of school. When I was in school and university, I didn't feel like I had anything to say. It was only when I was asked to work on this book about Quark Express, the page layout program from the early 90s, that all of a sudden I felt, oh, wait, I have something to say about that. So the second secret is write like you talk. And this is a hard one, but I decided, or maybe there's a corollary to that, which is if you're not having fun, then your reader won't either. That's key. So I started writing in a way that, look, I would enjoy reading this. I'm having fun writing it, and that seemed to come across to the reader. And in fact, that my first ever book about Quark Express, somebody once wrote to me and they said, I actually took your book on my honeymoon and I read it on the beach. It was a computer technology book, but it was so fun that I just had fun with it. I think that's really important. You have to not just have something to say, but you have to really love it. And I so want to tell my friends about it. And that need will come through the writing. And it's true for speaking too. For all the conferences we do. It's all about what are you an expert in? And then what are you passionate in? Even if we didn't pay you, what would you love to talk about? Right? That needs to come across, and the audience will take that in.
So I'm assuming the Quark Express book was your first big break, really.
That was the first. That was the big break. Yes.
How did that come about? Were you approached? Did you approach someone else?
That was a crazy long story. Which, let me see if I can shorten it to. There was another author working on it. I was working with the editor on it on a different project, and the editor came to me and said, David, you know about Quark Express, right? And I said, yeah. And he said, we have this other writer who's doing the book, but could you just write like 1 or 2 chapters because he's having trouble completing it? And I, sure. So I did 1 or 2, and then he said, could you write a couple more? Sure. And then, long story short, again, I ended up writing the entire book. It was by accident. I had a good time doing it. And when they sent me a check, a royalty check, I remember back to this feeling of I couldn't figure out why they had sent me money. And I try to remember that feeling every now and again, because that early, this was my early 20s, and it was such an important feeling of, again, I would have done this even if they hadn't paid me. I just had so much fun doing it. It was a lot of work, but fun kind of work, or work kind of fun or something. And I feel like so many of us have lost that memory. So many of us are like, I'm working because I'm making money and you need to pay me for this money. Like, come on, this is supposed to be fun. If you're not having fun, you're not doing it right.
So earlier on, we briefly talked about, well, it wasn't that brief, InDesign magazine. With
Yes.
so many InDesign tutorials available for everyone to view on YouTube, and so much freely available information on the internet, how do you keep your InDesign magazine relevant and keep people coming back?
Right. Well, two things. First, there is a difference between someone who knows how to use InDesign a little bit doing a tutorial versus someone who really understands InDesign and how it fits into the greater ecosystem, explaining in an in-depth tutorial. So and that's kind of obvious, but I think people forget that most of the stuff out there on the web and on YouTube is garbage. And I cannot tell you how many tutorials of other people's I've watched where I'm like, this person, they don't know what they're doing. They're telling people to do it wrong. It's not just on YouTube. I see this on Adobe. When Adobe is putting people on stage, or it's like, oh my, do you realize how bad that is? That is going to get people into so much trouble. So it's painful. So I have a personal mission to put out good information, the best quality information that we possibly can. And so that's a difference. Second thing, though, is that I like this idea about learning, about education, that my friend Morty Golding mentioned years ago. Morty said, look, there's two kinds of education. There's two kinds of learning. There's just-in-time learning and just-in-case learning. And most of the work that people do, most of the education that people have these days is, I need a solution right now. Go to YouTube or look in a book or look on the web or whatever. That's all just-in-time learning. I got to get it done right now. I'm on deadline. However, just-in-case learning is much richer. Going to university or going to reading InDesign magazine or taking a course at LinkedIn Learning, or I also do a lot of training at LinkedIn Learning. All of those things are really great examples of just-in-case learning. And you take it from a deeper level so that as you're working, you're not panicking, trying to figure out how to solve it. You're understanding, you're working along, you're thinking, oh yeah, there was, David said there was this way of, how was it again? And then you go and look it up. Maybe you go and look, maybe you don't remember it immediately, but you already know that it exists. You already know there's a solution, and then you can figure it out. I think that's a very different kind of learning, and like I said, I think it's richer, and people are more successful in the long term if they can balance those just in case and just in time learning.
So to summarize everything you just said, there's a lot of garbage on the internet.
There really is. Oh my gosh.
So whenever you need to find something, what you need to do is you need to dig, and you need to find the correct things.
Well, and I'll tell you that there is a so CreativePro is, like I said, InDesign magazine is turning into CreativePro magazine. CreativePro magazine is one of the benefits of the membership, a membership at creativepro.com, right? So creativepro.com, you can go, we have like 15,000 free articles, and you're welcome to dig. And there's a lot of good stuff in there, but it might take you a little bit more time. We have a membership model. So if you sign up to become a member of CreativePro, which is not that expensive, you get premium content. You get access to all the back issues of the magazine. And a lot of what we're trying to do is curate that experience, because there's no doubt if you have enough time, you will find the content. You can dig through YouTube and the web and look through all of our free articles and so on. You will find good content, but it's going to take you time. So our business model is really in large part based on give us a little bit of your money and we'll save you a lot of time.
I don't know whether you do or not. Have you done any kind of educational courses in
Uh,
relation to Creative Pro? So, like a 3-month
we
course that someone does and learns about a specific subject.
It's funny you should say that. We have just started beginning. We did a little course, not 3 months. It's actually like a 1 hour course on a topic called grep. Grep is for InDesign users. It's a way to find patterns of text.
Yeah,
So
I
if you're
use that a lot in
looking,
programming.
there you go. Right, exactly. So, but for those people listening, if you're looking for like, I want to find all the text inside parentheses. That's a kind of thing that you could use grep for. Anyway, you can use grep inside of Adobe InDesign. Adobe InDesign users may want to learn about grep. So we have a short, like a 1 hour course, video training course on how to do that. So we're putting our toe into that world, and it's kind of fun. It's a different experience.
So, where does Judaism for Dummies come from?
Ah, yes. So Judaism for Dummies. I'm Jewish. I was brought up very non-religious. Very non-religious. We've always celebrated Hanukkah and Christmas because you get more presents that way. That's important. And um, so, but I've always been curious. And I think when you ask where did it come from, it came from a curiosity. Like, wouldn't it be interesting to learn more about that? And this goes back to your question earlier about secret. What's my secret for writing? Here's another secret. Um, get a contract to write something with a publisher, and then you're obligated to learn it and write it. So I have this. So I had a literary agent back then who said, have you thought about writing a book like this? And I said, sure, that'd be fun. That'd be wacky. I don't know anything about it, but but I'm interested. So I went and I found a rabbi, who I already knew actually, a friend of mine who's a rabbi, and I said, would you be interested in doing this? When you could be the rabbi, I could be the dummy, right? This is Judaism for Dummies. I get to be the dummy, learn all about it, and then we get to write it together. We got a contract to do it, which obligated us. With the obligation, I was forced to learn as much as I possibly could, and then wrote it. But really, all my books. I wrote a book about airplanes called The Flying Book, and The Flying Book was all about why airplanes fly. I mean, from the passenger's point of view, not the pilot's point of view, but for all of us who are passengers who are sitting on the plane going, how the heck does this work? I decided I'd write a book about it. So I talked talked a publisher into giving me a contract. They said, "Do you know anything about this?" I said, "No, but I'll learn." And I wrote a book that has been for a lot of people. It's been very helpful for them. So all of those come out of curiosity. It all comes out of, wow, that'd be really cool to learn more about, wouldn't it? Well, maybe I'll write a book about it.
Yeah, I feels like that's cheating.
Well, it is. In some ways it is, but here's the thing. The concept in Buddhism of beginner's mind. For me, a lot of writing comes down to a question of beginner's mind, where if I am coming at it fresh with, again, the dummy perspective, the idea of, look, I know I don't know. I know. So what am I curious about? And what would I like to learn? And I go out and I learn it, and I really learn it. I do a lot of research, and I talk to people. I do a lot of interviews, and then I put it together, and I write it in such a way that I would find it compelling as, again, a beginner. And somehow that combination seems to work. So on the one hand, it's cheating. On the other hand, it actually seems to be very effective because the reader then realizes, oh, wow, that's really interesting. He seems to understand my question even before I ask it.
Well, yeah, if it works, it works, and if a book appears at the end of it,
That's right.
even better.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the best way to write a book. It's not necessarily the most efficient way, but it's certainly it's what I've done.
I'm gonna not let this drag on for too long. So let's
Okay.
tie this
It's
interview
fun
up.
chatting.
I've
All right.
got one last question for you. Nice
All
and
right. This is the
straightforward.
hard one. This is the hard one,
the really
right?
hard one. Are you
Okay.
a Mac or PC person?
Oh.
Oh, you're not
I'm a
allowed to
Mac
say
person.
both. You're a Mac person.
I am a Mac person. I mentioned earlier my 128K Mac. Um I had a really strange, auspicious childhood that my stepfather worked at Xerox PARC, the Palo Alto Research Center, where much of the Mac, the graphical user interface, the mouse, all of the Ethernet, all of these things were basically invented at Xerox PARC. And so when I was a little kid, I would go and hang out at his work and I would just play with this stuff. It was very natural way to learn. And so it was years later that I found the Mac. The first Mac came out in 1984, and I looked at it and I said, "That that's that's what I want." Well, it's no mistake. It's no accident because the Mac was inspired by all the work they did at Xerox PARC. So it's a well-known fact that Steve Jobs toured Xerox PARC and said, "That's what the Mac should look like. Make it look just like that." And Apple basically stole it all and built the Mac. So I've been a Mac user since '84. I have Windows machines. I know how to use Windows machines. My kids got us to build a PC here at home because it was a fun project to work on together, and of course they like playing games on the PC. So we have both. It is both, but um, I personally am a Mac guy.
I think I switched to Macs in about 2011. I had
Okay.
a lot of web clients at the time, and they were all using Macs, and I needed to be able to
Yes.
support them and explain them how to set up their emails and everything else. And without having a Mac
Yeah.
on site, I couldn't visually do it. So, except I started using one, and I thought, this is a lot easier and better than the PC I've been using for years and years. So that was it.
It,
Since then, it's just been
interesting.
MacBook Pro laptops, MacBook
Yeah.
Minis, and that's been it. iPads, yeah, and as you know, all that
It's
stuff's just
it's
exploded now. So it's
it has, and I think that said, I keep wanting to reassure people who do use Windows, who are on Windows. There's nothing wrong with it. It works great. I mean, it can be very efficient. It can, and for certain apps, be significantly better than the Mac in terms of performance. So there's nothing wrong with Windows. It's a personality thing. It's how I work. Once you're in, especially on the Adobe apps that I work with most of the time, when you're in the app, it honestly doesn't matter 95% of the time, 98% of the time. It doesn't matter whether you're in Mac or Windows. It's just the ecosystem you're in. Once you have to leave the app to go figure out how do I change a setting, that I have to bang my head against the table several times.
it's you've been up for a few hours already and start your day. So I'm going to finish the interview there, and you have a
Okay.
really good rest of the day. And
Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you for doing this. It's
I
brilliant.
really I appreciate you having me on. This is it's always lovely chatting with you, and this is great. I'm glad we could capture this. Uh,
Cool.
Find us at Creative Pro, and I hope we'll see you and everyone watching at a Creative Pro event sometime. It'll be fun.